The first panel is always, for me, I think, the most eye-opening for all of us, because when we look at it as actually the state of the media. What is the media about right now? Where is it going to? It aligns with the discussion of history we've had over the past few weeks. So today is all about you asking them questions and me just kind of sitting back and letting it roll. As always, or not as always, but done a couple times in class, Twitter feed is up and live. So if you've got a question that you want to ask our panelists, just use the hashtag for class. So it's going to be GOUR 1500. Wow. GOUR 1500 is the way to do it. As you'll see, Maureen's already shooting videos that she can post it on her Twitter feed. And that's how it kind of works out. So I'm going to go down the road, introduce you, and then get the questions started. So first we have Dr. Chris Allen. He is a full professor at the university, or at School of Communication here at UNO in the journalism program. He is also kind of our resident international communication, international media guy. As we discussed in class, he spent a year teaching in the country of Oman as a Fulbright scholar. He is also been working with the State Department over the past few years, training professors at Kabul University in Afghanistan on how to teach journalism. So the stories he has are far and wide. It's always a good opportunity for us to ask him questions. Next to Chris is Matt Hansen. Matthew Hansen is a reporter at Omaha World Herald. Recently a columnist, has his own column now at the Omaha World Herald, which is a beautiful thing for any writer at a newspaper to have. He has had several beats. He has covered everything from the war in Afghanistan to military here, locally to education to you name it, he has covered it. So it's always a pleasure to have him around. Next to Matt is Dr. Sherry Wilson. Dr. Sherry Wilson is associate professor here in the School of Communication, also in the journalism program. She is the division head for journalism and media communication. Her background is newspaper writing, newspaper editing, as well as teaching classes here in law, ethics, again, you name it. She has a strong background in it. She is a person that is an excellent source of information when it comes to, okay, I want to do this thing called journalism. What should I do? She's the person you ask. So that's why I love the fact that she is here. And finally, Maureen Kaufman is a recent, well not so recent now, graduate here at UNO. She is a massive rising star at WLWT. She's the producer for the 10 o'clock news there. She started off kind of where you are now, and she will tell you kind of how she got to where she is. But she is, are you the lead producer there now for 10 o'clock? Or
I'm technical media producer.
Technical media producer?
So I put all the blocking together.
So she can tell you that side of the universe. She can talk to you about how this thing called television works. So really quick, please give them a round of applause and thank you. The first question I like to ask every time I've got a group up here is, okay, how did you get into the business you're in right now? So if you could, tell us your biography. Tell us how you got to where you're at this moment. Chris, why don't you start?
Thanks. Hi, guys. The other thing that Dr. Tima didn't tell you is that I get to teach this class every now and then, too. So it's great to be back in front of the large group like this. When I was a Cub Scout, I was like 8 years old. My Cub Scout troop took a trip. We lived in Carroll, Iowa at that time, and my Cub Scout troop took a trip out to the radio station, KCIM Radio, and I was fascinated by it. I was just absolutely amazed. When they left, I didn't want to go. I wanted to stay. Now, if you skip ahead 9 years, and I was in high school. We'd moved to a town called Oskaloosa by then, and a classmate of mine had a part-time job at the local radio station, and he was moving on to other things, and he recommended me for the job, and I got it. And within moments, I fell in love with radio. And at 17, I started my career. So I've now been in the business 41 years. And I have rarely been away from it. I went to school at Iowa State and majored in journalism, broadcast journalism, became a news reporter in radio in several places in Iowa, moved on to a public relations career in Chicago for a youth activity, back to Iowa State for a master's degree, and it was through that I got offered a job at University of North Dakota. to teach. And I'd never had any designs on teaching. I never thought I'd end up doing that. As it turns out, journalism is now, being a reporter is now my second favorite job. Teaching is definitely my first favorite. I have always considered myself a journalist who happens to work in the broadcast field. I don't believe in a difference between a broadcast journalist and a newspaper journalist. The writing style is somewhat different, but we are all journalists. And it's always been my passion. If somebody had when I was still a reporter, if somebody had come to me and said, you can't work in broadcasting anymore, you can only work in newspapers, I would have said, sure, fine, no problem, I can do that. And I would have been supremely happy. And that's the great thing about teaching, is that I get to teach across the board now. I get to teach people who are who want to go into print journalism and broadcast journalism and into advertising and public relations, and I get to see all of them and work with them. So I mean, that's how I got into the business. And one other interesting thing is I always worked in relatively small towns. The largest town I ever worked in was Des Moines, and I was there for 2 years. I worked in Ames and Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I worked in Grand Forks, North Dakota, where I was news director. I worked in Columbia, Missouri, while I was getting my PhD down there. And so I've worked in small towns, and I never really, honest to God, I can say this really honestly, I never wanted to work for a network. I really believe in community journalism, because I really believe it's the community where you are impacted the most. Schools and city councils, and how good are your streets, and are the hospitals providing adequate care, and all of those things. Are the schools teaching your kids what they need to? How much is it costing? Are you getting a good deal for that? All of those things. Those were the things that always fired my passion. As dull and awful as some of the meetings can possibly be, and they are deadly. Really, I've always wanted to be a community journalist, and I believe that's where the real heart of journalism lies.
Hi, I'm Matthew. It's always fun to come to this class because like Maureen, it wasn't all that long ago that I was somewhere in the middle of a classroom exactly like this at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln. It was 15 years actually now, and so 15 years ago I was sitting somewhere, definitely not in the front row. I was more of an underachiever in the back. I'm from Red Cloud, Nebraska, son of a farmer, grandson of a farmer, great-grandson of a farmer. My dad was the first person in our family to go to college, so I was second. So this is not a likely career path for me. But I loved it from the time I was 15, took a high school journalism class, realized that I found something I was a little bit good at. It was sort of the only thing that I was a little bit good at, so I thought I should probably stick with it. And did the progression, high school to college, got involved with the college newspaper, had some internships, that turned into a job at the Journal-Star in Lincoln, that turned into a job at the World Herald in Omaha, and now it's turned into a columnist job just 9 months ago, which is it's sort of cool to come back here and think about that. I don't take a lot of time to sort of step back and think what has happened in the last 15 years. But when I was a kid growing up in Red Cloud, I would read Tom Chattel and Mike Kelly and Rainbow Rowell in the Omaha World Herald. I was kind of a nerd. You can't tell I was actually reading the newspaper when I was 13. So it's great. It's in a lot of ways it really is my dream job. So I'm happy to be here today and be able to talk about that.
Hi, I'm Sherry Wilson. I'm on the faculty here in the School of Communication. I have a cold, so if my voice gives out, please excuse it. I think it'll hold out okay. I got interested in writing in high school, I think. I always enjoyed writing, but I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do with it. And I had a high school guidance counselor who suggested to me that I might want to look at journalism when I went to college. And I was considering being a math major, actually. And my first semester in college, I had a calculus class that was at 7:30 every morning of the week, Monday through Friday. And after that, and I was with a lot of pre-med students and people who really excelled at math. And that was enough to convince me I wasn't going to be a math major and that I should maybe look at journalism.
Other end of the spectrum.
What?
The other end of the spectrum.
Yeah, exactly. And in college, I was very active with my school newspaper. I mean, one of the things I would suggest to any of you who are thinking about getting into this field, the more experience you can get, even at a young age, and you can tell from what Matthew and Chris have said, you know, the more experience you can get and learning the ropes, the better off you're going to be in terms of finding jobs and everything else down the road. My first job out of college was in Fort Dodge, Iowa, kind of like Chris, I guess, in smaller cities, at least for part of my career. I was a city government reporter, covered all of those meetings that he was talking about, you know, the city council, the planning board, all that kind of stuff. But it's really crucial, especially in a kind of mid-sized town like that, to have their local government covered in terms of letting people know what's going on. Kind of stumbled into editing, and I was actually an editor for more years than I was a reporter. I was an editor the last year or so I was in Fort Dodge, and then I moved to a small daily newspaper in Marshall, Minnesota, where I was for a number of years. Decided that I was going to go back to school with the idea of possibly teaching journalism. Always thinking that if I didn't like it, I could go back into the profession. But I ended up going to Iowa State, like Chris, for my master's degree. Really fell in love with teaching and kind of just stuck with it. My PhD's from the University of Minnesota. When I lived in the Twin Cities, I also did work as a copy editor at the St. Paul Pioneer Press, which was obviously a somewhat bigger paper than the other places where I had worked. Gave me a lot of good experience that I was then able to bring into the teaching field. So yeah, now I've been at UNO for quite a few years, you know, trying to teach young journalists the skills that I've learned.
Hey guys, I'm Maureen Kaufman. As everyone mentioned, I go to school here too, just like you guys are right now. So it's just like you, sitting in the classroom and trying to figure out what I was going to do. I kind of knew that I was going into broadcasting in high school. I went to Omaha Northwest, and we did a TV show every morning, and you know, it came my senior year, and it was time to declare a major, and I was like, broadcasting, okay, I can do this. Came to UNO right out of high school, and met Dr. Alex. Made him my academic advisor, the best things I've ever done. Learned all kinds of things. I was president of the National Broadcast Society here on campus. Worked at UNO Television under Mark Dale. If, you know, Dr. Wilson's talking about getting experience, you can get it here and get paid to do it. You know, that's a big deal, right? Because internships, you don't typically get paid in this business. So anything that you can do, you know, right now in school, as young as you are now, and just build your resumes is very important. You know, went to various competitions with National Broadcast Society, so that was a lot of fun. I learned a lot of my production skills here at UNO through UNO TV, working in various programs. And I learned the journalism side too through my classes. So you know, I was able to learn a lot just going to school here, so that was great too. I've now been at WWT for 6 years. I started there when I was 19. I was part-time production assistant. These teachers can definitely vouch to say that I definitely was falling asleep in some of my classes because I was doing the morning show. I would be getting up at 3 in the morning, get there by 3:30, 3:45, do the show, go to class, go to UNO TV. So very busy, jam-packed, but I put my time in early, and that's how I have the schedule that I do today. That's how I'm the senior director of my department in production. I direct our 10 o'clock newscast every night. Today I'm probably doing the 4, 6, and 10. I do multiple shows in a day. You know, it's just the way broadcast news is going. Everything's very condensed, less people, more work, that kind of thing. We're going back to backpack journalism. One-man bands are back. You're going to write, shoot, edit your own stuff a lot